Sign the house over to me, my husband demanded while my water broke. 3 days later, he saw me on TV and couldn't believe his eyes. Before we dive into the story, please let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more incredible stories like this one. The contractions started at 3:47 in the afternoon. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the kitchen clock, gripping the marble countertop so hard my knuckles turned white, trying to breathe through the pain that felt like my entire body was being torn in half. "Marcus," I called out, my voice strained. "Marcus, it's time. The baby's coming." My husband appeared in the kitchen doorway, but he wasn't rushing to grab my hospital bag or help me to the car. He was holding a manila folder and wearing that expression I'd come to dread over the past 9 months, the one that made his handsome face look cold and calculating, like a stranger wearing my husband's skin. "Perfect timing, actually," Marcus said, setting the folder on the kitchen island between us. "Before we go anywhere, you need to sign these papers, Victoria." Another contraction seized me and I doubled over, gasping. When I could finally speak, I managed. "What papers?" "Marcus, please, we need to go to the hospital now." "The house transfer documents," he said as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "I need you to sign the house over to me. My lawyer says it's better to handle this before the baby comes. Clean and simple." I stared at him through the haze of pain, trying to process his words. The house. Our house. Except it wasn't really our house, was it? It was mine. The beautiful colonial in the historic district that my grandmother had left me in her will 3 years ago, right before I met Marcus at that charity gala where he'd swept me off my feet with his charm and his promises of forever. "You want me to sign over my grandmother's house?" I whispered. "Right now? While I'm in labor?" "It's just a formality, Vic. We're married. What's yours is mine anyway, right? But my financial advisor says for tax purposes." "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "No, Marcus, I'm not signing anything right now. I'm having our baby. We need to go." His face darkened. That was new too, the rage that could flash across his features like a summer storm. The Marcus I'd married 2 years ago never got angry. But that Marcus had disappeared somewhere around my second trimester, replaced by this version who stayed out late, who smelled like expensive perfume that wasn't mine, who looked at me like I was an inconvenience. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped. "It's just a signature. 5 seconds and we can go." I said no. Another contraction hit and I cried out, gripping the counter. "Please, Marcus, the baby." "Fine." He grabbed his car keys, but he didn't come to help me. "You want to be stubborn? Then handle it yourself. I have a meeting anyway." I watched in disbelief as my husband walked toward the front door. "Marcus, you can't leave me like this. I'm having your child." He turned back, and the look in his eyes was pure contempt. "My child? Are you sure about that, Victoria? Because the way I see it, you've been so busy playing the perfect little housewife that you haven't noticed what's been going on right under your nose." The words hit harder than any contraction. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I'm done with this charade. You, this house, this whole boring life. I met someone else. Someone exciting. Someone who actually understands me." He pulled out his phone and held up a photo. A beautiful blonde woman, younger than me, draped across his arm at what looked like a fancy restaurant. "Her name is Amber, and unlike you, she doesn't come with Grandma's house and a bunch of emotional baggage." I couldn't breathe. The pain in my chest had nothing to do with labor. "You're having an affair? While I'm pregnant with your baby?" "Our baby, allegedly. Though I've asked Amber to look into whether we can demand a paternity test. Given how convenient this pregnancy was right when you found out about my promotion." "You bastard!" I gasped. "You absolute bastard! I never—" "Save it." He opened the front door. "I'll be at Amber's place. Sign the papers and leave them on the counter. My lawyer will pick them up tomorrow. And Victoria, don't expect me at the hospital. Amber and I have a weekend trip planned to the Hamptons." The door slammed shut, the sound of his BMW starting up, then fading away down the tree-lined street. And I was alone, in labor, in the house my grandmother had loved, with contractions coming faster now, every 3 minutes. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called 911. Then I called the only other person I could think of. "Evelyn!" I sobbed when my best friend answered. "My water broke and Marcus just left me. He's having an affair and he wants me to sign over Grandma's house and I don't know what to do. I'm on my way, Evelyn said immediately. Don't move. The ambulance is coming, and I'm right behind it. Hold on, Vic. Just hold on. The next few hours were a blur of pain and paramedics and the strange, sterile comfort of the hospital delivery room. Evelyn held my hand through every contraction, every push, every moment. I should have had Marcus beside me, but didn't. And when my daughter finally arrived at 11:23 that night, tiny and perfect and screaming with the fury of someone who'd fought hard to enter this world, I looked down at her face and made a promise. I'm going to protect you, I whispered as the nurse laid her on my chest. From everything, from him. I promise you, sweet girl, your mother is stronger than he thinks. What Marcus didn't know, what no one knew except my grandmother's ancient lawyer, Mr. Chen, was that I wasn't just Victoria Grant, the abandoned wife in the beautiful house. I was Victoria Chen Grant, sole heir to the Chen technology empire. And 3 days from now, when the reading of my grandmother's will became public record, my husband was going to discover he'd made the biggest mistake of his miserable life. Before I continue, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And if this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The first day after giving birth was a fog of exhaustion, visitors, and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. Evelyn stayed with me in the hospital room, fielding calls and running interference. My phone buzzed constantly, but Marcus's name never appeared on the screen. His mother called. I let it go to voicemail. In it, Patricia's aristocratic voice dripped with false concern. Victoria, darling, Marcus mentioned you had the baby. How wonderful. He's been so busy with work, poor dear. I'm sure he'll visit when he can. Do send photos. I deleted it without responding. Marcus's sister called. Another voicemail. Vic, it's Stephanie. Look, I don't know what's going on between you and my brother, but Mom's asking questions and I really don't want drama at Sunday brunch. Can you two just work it out? Deleted. The only call I answered was from Mr. Chen, my grandmother's lawyer. His elderly voice was warm with genuine concern. Ms. Victoria, I heard about the baby. Congratulations. I also heard that your husband was not present for the birth. News travels fast, I said quietly, adjusting my daughter in my arms. I'd named her Catherine, after my grandmother. In certain circles, yes, there was a pause. Ms. Victoria, I must inform you that the mandatory waiting period expires in 2 days. On the 3rd day following your grandmother's passing anniversary, the full details of her estate become public record. This includes the technology patents, the real estate holdings, and the investment portfolio. My heart started to race. All of it? All of it. Your grandmother was very specific in her wishes. She wanted you to have 1 year of privacy to mourn, to adjust. But she also knew that eventually the truth would come out. You are the primary beneficiary of an estate valued at approximately $847 million. The number hung in the air between us, $847 million. And Marcus had no idea. When we'd married, I'd told him about Grandma's house, described her as a comfortable widow who'd made some smart investments. I'd never mentioned that those investments included the patents for 3 revolutionary microchip designs that were in every smartphone on the planet. Mr. Chen, I said slowly, what happens if someone tries to claim assets that belong to me, say through a fraudulent transfer or coercion? Then that person would face significant legal consequences. Why do you ask, Ms. Victoria? I told him about the papers Marcus had demanded I sign, about his threats, his affair, his abandonment. Mr. Chen listened in silence, and when I finished, his voice had hardened into something sharp and dangerous. I see. Ms. Victoria, do you still have those unsigned documents? They're at the house. Don't touch them. In fact, don't sign anything your husband presents to you. And Ms. Victoria, I think it's time we had a conversation about asset protection and divorce proceedings. But first, you rest. Enjoy your daughter. Let me handle the legal groundwork. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet hospital room, Catherine sleeping peacefully in my arms, and let myself imagine what was coming. Marcus thought he was so smart, so cunning. He'd positioned himself perfectly, or so he believed. Marry the lonely heiress, convince her to sign over her assets, then discard her for his mistress. But he'd made one critical error. He'd assumed I was weak, that grief and love and pregnancy had made me stupid and compliant. He had no idea who my grandmother really was or what she'd taught me before she died. "Never let them see you coming," Grandma Chen used to say, her dark eyes twinkling over her afternoon tea. Men like your grandfather, they see a small Chinese woman and think submissive, easy to control. Then I bought out their company and they realized too late. The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. I smiled down at Catherine. "Your great-grandmother was a warrior, baby girl. And she raised one too." The second day, Evelyn brought me clothes from home and helped me prepare to leave the hospital. As she was packing my bag, my phone buzzed. Finally, a text from Marcus. "Heard you had the baby, girl, right? Whatever. Did you sign the papers? Lawyer says he needs them by Friday, or we'll have to do this the hard way. Your choice." I stared at the message, rage building in my chest. The hard way. As if he held all the cards. As if I had no choice but to comply. I texted back. "Papers are still on the counter. Unsigned. Come by if you want to discuss it in person." His response was immediate. "Can't. In the Hamptons with Amber. She says hi BTW. Just sign the damn papers, Victoria. Stop being difficult." Evelyn read over my shoulder and her face darkened. "I want to kill him." Slowly, with a rusty spoon. "Get in line," I muttered. Then I smiled. "But I have a better idea." I called Mr. Chen back. "I'm ready to discuss those divorce proceedings. And I want every asset protected, every account frozen, everything. Can you make that happen?" "Consider it done, Ms. Victoria. I'll file the paperwork this afternoon. And may I suggest we also prepare a press release? Your grandmother's estate becomes public record tomorrow. It might be advantageous to control the narrative." "What kind of press release?" "The kind that introduces Victoria Chen Grant as the new CEO of Chen Technologies. The grieving granddaughter who spent her year of mourning preparing to honor her grandmother's legacy. The kind that mentions your recent childbirth and your plans to lead the company into a new era of innovation and social responsibility." I thought about Marcus, lounging on a beach somewhere with his mistress, smug and satisfied, counting down the hours until he could force me to sign away my house. "Do it," I said. "Release it tomorrow morning, primetime news cycle." "With pleasure, Ms. Victoria." That night, back home with Catherine in my arms, I walked through the house my grandmother had loved. Every room held memories. Her piano in the music room where she'd taught me Chopin, the library where she'd explained patent law and intellectual property rights, the garden where she'd told me about leaving China with nothing but her brilliant mind and her determination to never be powerless again. "He wanted to take this from us," I whispered to sleeping Catherine. "From you, your legacy. But he forgot something important. We're Chen women, and we don't surrender." The papers Marcus wanted me to sign were still on the kitchen counter where he'd left them. I picked them up, read through the legal language that would transfer my house, my inheritance, everything to his sole ownership. Then I fed them into the fireplace and watched them burn. The third day started like any other morning, except I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I ignored them all, focusing on feeding Catherine and getting her settled before the chaos truly began. At exactly 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, Chen Technologies issued their press release. By 8:15, it had been picked up by Bloomberg, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. By 8:30, the morning talk shows were discussing it. By 9 o'clock, my phone had completely stopped functioning from the sheer volume of calls and messages trying to get through. Evelyn arrived at 9:30, breathless and grinning. "Have you seen the news? Vic, it's everywhere. They're calling you the hidden heiress. There's a photo of you from Grandma Chen's memorial service, and they're going crazy about how you've been living in secret for a year. TMZ is camped outside trying to get pictures." "TMZ?" I laughed to spite myself. "Really? Really? An $847 million inheritance, a secret identity, and you're young and beautiful? You're a tabloid dream." She pulled out her iPad and showed me the headlines. "Tech heiress emerges from hiding. Chen Technologies reveals new CEO, granddaughter Victoria. Victoria Chen Grant inherits nearly billion-dollar empire. And my personal favorite, from secret heiress to CEO, the Victoria Chen Grant story." Each article included details about my grandmother's remarkable life, the value of her patents, the scope of her real estate holdings. They mentioned my recent childbirth, my intensely private nature, my plans for the company. None of them mentioned Marcus. He was so far beneath this story's scope that he simply didn't exist. "When do you think he'll see it?" Evelyn asked, settling onto my couch with Catherine in her arms. I checked my watch. Well, he's 3 hours behind us in California, so probably... My phone buzzed. A call from Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. Right about now. The voicemail notification popped up immediately. I put it on speaker. Victoria, what the hell is going on? Someone just sent me a news article that says you inherited nearly $1 billion. That's got to be a mistake, right? Some clerical error with your grandmother's estate? Call me back immediately. We need to talk about this. And did you sign those papers yet? Call me. Now. Evelyn snorted. He still doesn't get it. Give him time, I said. It's sinking in slowly. Another voicemail. This one from Patricia, Marcus's mother. Victoria, darling, I just saw the most extraordinary news coverage. Surely there's been some mistake about your grandmother's estate. Marcus mentioned she left you a house, but the articles are saying, well, they're saying quite a lot. Do call me, dear. We should discuss this as a family. Deleted. Another from Stephanie. Oh my God, Vic, you're rich? Like really rich? Why didn't you tell us? Does Marcus know? He's freaking out. Call him, or call me, just call someone. Deleted. Then the texts started flooding in as Marcus apparently discovered that calling wasn't working. Answer your damn phone. This is insane. You can't just ignore me. We're married, Victoria. That money is half mine. I'm coming back from the Hamptons. We need to talk in person. You owe me an explanation. Did you know about this money when we got married? Answer me right now. I watched them populate my screen, one after another, his desperation and rage growing with each message. Then I blocked his number entirely. Cold, Evelyn observed. I love it. He'll find other ways to reach me, I said, but for now, I want peace. At noon, Mr. Chen called with an update. Ms. Victoria, your husband's attorney has been trying to reach my office all morning. They're requesting an emergency meeting to discuss the estate and marital assets. What did you tell them? That you're currently recovering from childbirth and unavailable for meetings. I also informed them that divorce proceedings have been filed and all marital assets are frozen pending litigation. His attorney was displeased. I can imagine. There's something else. We've received a request from Channel 7 News. They want to do an interview with you for their evening broadcast. A sympathetic piece about honoring your grandmother's legacy while navigating new motherhood. My heart started racing. An interview, on television, where Marcus would definitely see it. I'll do it, I said, but on my terms. I want it filmed here, in my house, in Grandma's library, and I want to talk about her vision for the company, her values, her belief in protecting family and legacy. I'll arrange it, Ms. Victoria. They can be there at 4:00 p.m. if that works for you. After he hung up, I sat in the quiet living room holding Catherine, thinking about what I wanted to say. About my grandmother, yes. About the company, absolutely, but also about the importance of trust, of partnership, of building something real instead of tearing others down for personal gain. Marcus would be watching. I wanted him to understand exactly what he'd lost. The camera crew arrived at 3:45, professional and efficient. They set up in the library, positioning me in Grandma's favorite chair, with Catherine sleeping peacefully in my arms. The late afternoon light streaming through the windows gave everything a warm, golden glow. The interviewer was a woman named Diana Torres, known for her thoughtful, in-depth profiles. She settled across from me with a kind smile. Thank you for doing this, Ms. Chen Grant. I know this is a difficult time. Please, call me Victoria. And thank you for being respectful of my privacy. The camera started rolling. Diana's first question was gentle. Victoria, the world learned today that you're the sole heir to the Chen Technologies fortune, but those who knew your grandmother describe her as intensely private. Can you tell us about her? I looked down at Catherine, then back up at the camera. My grandmother was the strongest person I've ever known. She came to this country with nothing but her education and her determination. She built an empire, yes, but more importantly, she built a legacy of innovation and integrity. She taught me that true strength isn't about power or wealth. It's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone diminish it. She left you quite a responsibility. She left me a gift, the chance to continue her work, to honor everything she built. And she gave me time to grieve, to prepare, to become the person who could carry this forward. I paused. She also taught me to recognize the difference between people who value you and people who value what you have. Diana leaned forward slightly. There have been some reports about personal challenges you've faced recently. Your husband wasn't present for your daughter's birth. I'd known this question was coming. Mr. Chen and I had discussed it. I could decline to answer, keep my private life private, but I thought about all the other women watching who might be in similar situations, who might be doubting their worth because someone told them they were worthless. No, I said quietly. He wasn't there. My husband chose to be elsewhere when our daughter was born, and in doing so, he showed me who he really is. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as betrayals, because they force you to see the truth. That must have been incredibly painful. It was, but it also clarified everything. I realized I'd been making myself smaller, quieter, trying to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. My grandmother didn't raise me to be small, she raised me to be mighty. Diana smiled. And what happens now? With the company, with your life? Now, I honor her legacy by living mine. I'll be taking over as CEO of Chen Technologies. I'll be raising my daughter to know her great-grandmother's strength, and I'll be building the life I deserve surrounded by people who actually value me. I looked directly into the camera, knowing Marcus would be watching. As for those who underestimated me, they're about to learn a very expensive lesson about the cost of their assumptions. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, but that soundbite was the one that would go viral. By the time the crew packed up and left, social media was already exploding with reactions. Evelyn showed me her phone, scrolling through Twitter. You're trending. Number 3 worldwide. Everyone's talking about the cost of their assumptions. It's iconic. I smiled, exhausted but satisfied. Good, let them talk. At 6:00 p.m., the interview aired on the evening news. I didn't watch it live, I was too busy with Catherine, but Evelyn recorded it and played back the highlights. I looked composed, dignified, strong, exactly how Grandma Chen had taught me to present myself. My phone, which I'd unblocked from all numbers except Marcus's, started ringing immediately. Patricia, Stephanie, old college friends, distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone suddenly wanted to reconnect, to congratulate me, to be part of my life now that they knew what it was worth. I ignored them all except for one call from my mother, who I'd barely spoken to since she'd married husband number 4 and moved to Arizona. Victoria, she said, her voice careful. I saw the interview. You looked beautiful. Your grandmother would be proud. Thank you, I said, not willing to give more than that. My mother had never understood Grandma Chen, had never valued the legacy she'd been building. She'd married for money instead of earning it, and it had left her perpetually dependent, perpetually diminished. I was thinking, Mom continued, maybe I could come visit, meet my granddaughter. We could talk about the estate, about your plans. I don't think so, Mom, not right now. I have a lot to handle. But Victoria, I'm your mother. We're family, surely. Family shows up when it matters, I said quietly. Where were you when I called to tell you I was in labor? When I told you Marcus had left me? Silence. Then, I thought you were being dramatic, that you'd work it out. You thought I wasn't worth the flight from Arizona, just like you thought Grandma's house was quaint and her life was small. You were wrong about both of us. I hung up before she could respond. If this story is making your blood boil like mine was, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, the revenge gets so much better. Your support means everything to this channel. That night, Marcus finally found a way to reach me. He showed up at the house at 11 p.m., pounding on the front door hard enough to wake Catherine. I watched him through the security camera, disheveled and desperate, his expensive clothes rumpled like he'd slept in them. Victoria! Open this door. We need to talk. I know you're in there. I picked up my phone and called 911. I'd like to report a disturbance, I told the dispatcher calmly. My estranged husband is at my property, threatening me. I have a restraining order being filed in the morning and he's been told to stay away. I have a newborn baby and I'm frightened. The lie about the restraining order would become truth by morning. Mr. Chen had already prepared the paperwork, but Marcus didn't need to know the technicalities. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. I watched through the camera as they approached Marcus, who was still ranting about his rights as my husband, his claim to the house, how I couldn't just lock him out of his own home. Sir, this property belongs to Ms. Chen Grant solely, one officer said. She's asked you to leave. If you don't comply, we'll have to arrest you for trespassing. Trespassing? This is my house. She's my wife. That's my baby in there. Sir, calm down. Do you have any documentation proving ownership of this property? I watched Marcus falter. He didn't, of course. The house had always been in my name, part of Grandma's estate. He'd just assumed that marriage meant automatic ownership. It's marital property, he blustered. Community property state, officer. What's hers is mine. Except when it's inherited property, which is exempt from marital asset division, the second officer said. Sir, you need to leave now. We won't ask again. Marcus's face went red with rage. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at the officers. But even in his fury, he retained enough sense to back down. He jabbed a finger at my front door. This isn't over, Victoria. You hear me? I'll take you to court. I'll fight for what's mine. You can't just cut me out. Sir, you're leaving now, or you're leaving in handcuffs. Choose. He chose to leave, but not before kicking my mailbox hard enough to dent it. The officers watched him screech away in his BMW, then came to the door to check on me. Miss Chen Grant, are you all right? I'm fine, thank you. Just scared. He's never been violent before, but with everything happening... I held Catherine closer, playing the frightened new mother perfectly. We'll file a report. And ma'am, we saw your interview tonight. What you said about recognizing your worth. My wife needed to hear that. Thank you. After they left, I sat in the quiet house, adrenaline still pumping through my veins. That had been closer than I'd expected. Marcus was coming unglued, which made him dangerous, but it also made him sloppy. Mr. Chen called at 7:00 a.m. the next morning. Ms. Victoria, I have some interesting news. Your husband's attorney contacted us with a settlement proposal. Already? Apparently, Mr. Marcus is motivated to resolve this quickly and quietly. He's offering to waive all claims to your inherited assets in exchange for a one-time payment of $50 million and shared custody of your daughter. I laughed. Actually laughed. $50 million for walking away from a marriage he already destroyed? And he wants custody of a daughter he hasn't even met? I assumed that would be your reaction. Shall I counteroffer? Tell them I'll give him exactly what he gave me when I was in labor. Nothing. He can have the clothes he left in the closet and his collection of golf clubs. Everything else stays with me, including full custody. If he wants to negotiate, he can start by explaining to a judge why he abandoned his wife during childbirth to vacation with his mistress. I'll relay the message. Also, Ms. Victoria, I should inform you that several news outlets have picked up the story about last night's police visit. Your husband made quite a scene, and at least one neighbor filmed it on their phone. It's on social media. Of course it is. The optics are rather favorable for your position. A new mother protecting herself and her infant from an aggressive, estranged husband. The public is very sympathetic. After we hung up, I looked up the video. Sure enough, there was Marcus in all his rage-filled glory, screaming about his rights while police officers tried to calm him down. The comments section was brutal. Imagine being married to an $847 million heiress and fumbling the bag this hard. This man really chose some random woman over a billionaire wife? He looks unhinged. She's better off without him. Notice how he's screaming about the money and the house, but hasn't mentioned his newborn daughter once? Tells you everything. That last comment hit hardest because it was true. In all his ranting, Marcus had never once asked about Catherine. Never asked if she was healthy, if she was sleeping, if she needed anything. She was just leverage to him, another asset to fight over. The next few days were a blur of legal maneuvers, media requests, and slowly adjusting to life as a single mother with a very public profile. Mr. Chen filed the restraining order, which was granted immediately given Marcus's documented behavior. He filed for divorce on my behalf, citing abandonment, adultery, and emotional cruelty. Marcus's attorney tried multiple times to reach a settlement, each offer slightly more desperate than the last. 40 million, 30 million, just... The house, then, just enough to get established with Amber, just something, anything, please. The answer was always the same, no. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd hired a private investigator the day after he left me in labor. Mr. Chen had recommended someone discreet, thorough, and very good at uncovering secrets. And Amber, it turned out, had quite a few secrets. 2 weeks after Catherine's birth, the investigator delivered his report. I read it in my library, Catherine sleeping peacefully in her bassinet beside me, and felt a cold satisfaction settle into my bones. Amber wasn't just Marcus's mistress. She was a professional one. Her real name was Amanda Stockton, and she'd made a career out of targeting mid-level executives with more ego than sense. She'd find men on the rise, men who felt undervalued by their wives, men who were desperate to prove they deserved more than they had. She'd seduce them, convince them to leave their spouses, and then systematically drain their bank accounts through expensive gifts, business investments that were really just scams, and eventually direct theft. She had at least 4 other victims I could find, men who'd been left broke and humiliated when she disappeared with their money. Marcus was her latest mark, and he'd fallen for it completely. The investigator had also uncovered something else. Amber was the one who'd encouraged Marcus to get me to sign over the house. She'd told him it was just good financial planning and that smart businessmen protect their assets. She'd probably been planning to disappear with whatever she could squeeze out of him the moment the ink was dry. I called Mr. Chen. "I want to offer Marcus a deal." "Ms. Victoria?" "Tell him I'll agree to settle the divorce quickly and quietly. No drawn-out court battle, no media circus. In exchange, he signs away all parental rights to Catherine and agrees to a gag order. He can't sell his story or speak about our marriage publicly." "And the financial settlement?" "Nothing. He gets nothing. But he also won't be exposed as the fool who fell for a con artist. I'll keep the information about Amber private. He can walk away with his dignity, if not his dignity." Mr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "You're being more generous than he deserves." "I'm being strategic. I don't want him in Catherine's life. This is the fastest way to ensure that. And Mr. Chen, after he signs, send everything we have on Amber to the FBI. She's been doing this across state lines. That's wire fraud, among other charges. Let the authorities handle her." "With pleasure, Ms. Victoria." The settlement conference happened the following week in Mr. Chen's oak-paneled office downtown. I arrived in a tailored designer suit, my hair professionally styled, every inch the CEO I was becoming. Marcus arrived looking like he hadn't slept in days, his expensive clothes hanging looser than before. We sat across a massive conference table from each other. I held his gaze steadily while our lawyers reviewed the terms. "Let me understand this," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "I give up all rights to my daughter, I sign away any claim to your money, and I agree to never speak about our marriage. In exchange for what, exactly?" "In exchange for your privacy," I said calmly. "I could drag this through the courts for years. I could publicize every detail of your affair, your abandonment, your attempt to defraud me out of my inheritance. Or we can both walk away quietly. You get to keep your job, your reputation such as it is, and your freedom to pursue whatever life you choose." "This is insane. You're punishing me for one mistake." "One mistake?" I leaned forward. "You had an affair while I was pregnant. You tried to steal my house. You abandoned me in labor. You've shown our daughter nothing but contempt. These aren't mistakes, Marcus. This is who you are, and I'm giving you a gift you don't deserve, the chance to disappear without consequence." He looked at his lawyer, desperate. "I have rights, parental rights, which you can certainly fight for in court," Mr. Chen interjected smoothly, "where we'll present evidence of your abandonment, your infidelity, and your attempt to coerce Ms. Chen Grant into signing fraudulent documents while she was in medical distress. I'm confident about our chances. Are you confident about yours?" Marcus stared at the papers in front of him. I watched him calculate, trying to find an angle, some way to come out ahead. But there was none. He'd played his hand and lost spectacularly. "What about Amber?" he asked finally, quietly. "What about her?" I replied, feigning ignorance. Is this settlement for her too?" "Why would I care about your mistress, Marcus?" He flinched at the word. "I just thought—" "Never mind." He picked up the pen. "Where do I sign?" 20 minutes later, it was done. Marcus was no longer Catherine's father, no longer my husband, no longer entitled to anything I had. He stood to leave, paused at the door. "I loved you once," he said. "I want you to know that." "No," I replied. "You loved what you thought I was. You never bothered to find out who I actually am. That's why you're here, signing away everything while I'm there, getting ready to run an empire. Goodbye, Marcus." He left without another word. Mr. Chen handed me a glass of expensive whiskey. "Congratulations, Ms. Victoria. You're officially free." I took the glass, but didn't drink. "There's one more thing. The information on Amber? Already sent to the appropriate authorities this morning. I took the liberty of anticipating your wishes." "Thank you." I stood, smoothing my suit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting at Chen Technologies. Time to introduce myself properly. The press conference announcing my official role as CEO was scheduled for exactly 1 month after Catherine's birth, long enough for me to recover physically, to get some semblance of routine established with a newborn, but soon enough to capitalize on the public interest in my story. I stood backstage at Chen Technologies headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in downtown that my grandmother had designed herself. Catherine was with Evelyn in a private room nearby, sleeping peacefully, unaware that her mother was about to step into a completely new life. "You ready?" Evelyn asked, straightening my collar. I was wearing a custom suit in deep navy with Grandma Chen's signature dragon pin on the lapel. "I don't know," I admitted. "Is anyone ready for something like this? Your grandmother was, and she raised you to be just like her." The press conference room was packed. Every major business publication was represented, along with mainstream media outlets covering the human interest angle. I walked to the podium, the flash of cameras nearly blinding, and gripped the edges of the wood to steady myself. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice clear and strong. "As you know, I'm Victoria Chen Grant, and I'm honored to be taking over as CEO of Chen Technologies. My grandmother built this company on principles of innovation, integrity, and independence. She believed that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. Under my leadership, we'll continue that mission while expanding into new areas of sustainable development and ethical AI. I spoke for 20 minutes about the company's vision, our upcoming projects, our commitment to our employees and stakeholders. Then I opened the floor to questions. The first was predictable. "Ms. Chen Grant, how do you plan to balance running a major corporation with being a new mother?" "The same way men have done it for generations," I replied. "With excellent childcare, strong support systems, and the understanding that being a parent makes me better at my job, not worse. I'm more motivated than ever to build a world worth inheriting." Another reporter: "There's been a lot of media attention on your personal life, your recent divorce. How has that affected your ability to focus on the company?" I smiled thinly. My divorce was finalized last week. It was a necessary step in removing toxic influences from my life. I'm now focused entirely on my daughter and my work, the two things that actually matter. Next question. "Ms. Chen Grant, your ex-husband has been photographed recently looking quite distressed. Some reports suggest his mistress has disappeared with a significant amount of his money. Do you have any comment?" This question wasn't on the approved list, but I'd been expecting it anyway. The news about Amber had broken 2 days ago, federal charges for wire fraud across multiple states. Marcus's name wasn't mentioned in the official reports, but the timeline was obvious to anyone paying attention. "I have no comment on my ex-husband's personal affairs," I said. "I wish him well in resolving whatever difficulties he's experiencing. Though I will say this, when you build your life on deception, you shouldn't be surprised when deception destroys it." The room erupted with follow-up questions, but I raised a hand. "That's all the time I have for personal matters. This is a business conference, and I'd like to keep it focused on the business. Now, who has questions about our third quarter projections?" The conference continued for another hour, but that exchange was the one that went viral. By evening, it was all over social media, analyzed and memed and debated. The general consensus seemed to be that I'd handled it with grace and just enough bite to be interesting. Marcus, meanwhile, was falling apart publicly. The news about Amber had destroyed him. Not only had she stolen roughly $200,000 from him through various schemes, but the revelation that he'd been conned made him a laughingstock. His company had quietly asked him to take a leave of absence. His friends had stopped calling. Even his mother, according to Evelyn's sources, was mortified by the whole situation. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. That night, I sat in Grandma's library with Catherine, feeding her while looking at the portrait that hung above the fireplace. My grandmother in her 60s, dressed in an elegant qipao, her expression serene but her eyes sharp as knives. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. "I protected everything you built. I protected your legacy, and I protected myself." Catherine finished eating and looked up at me with those serious dark eyes that reminded me so much of my grandmother's. She would never know Marcus. She would grow up knowing only strength, only independence, only the fierce love of women who refuse to be diminished. "You're going to change the world, little one," I told her. "Just like your great-grandmother did, just like I will. And anyone who tries to stop you, well, they'll learn the same lesson your father did. Never underestimate a Chen woman." The following months were a whirlwind of board meetings, product launches, and slowly building Chen Technologies into something even more impressive than before. I hired more women, more immigrants, more people who'd been told they weren't good enough, but proved everyone wrong. I invested in sustainable technology, in education programs, in changing the very nature of how we thought about success. And every night, I came home to my daughter, to the house my grandmother had loved, and I felt complete in a way I never had when Marcus was there. Evelyn moved in to help with Catherine, and we created an odd little family unit, two best friends raising a baby together in a mansion that was slowly filling with laughter and love and purpose. 6 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Marcus, handwritten, delivered through Mr. Chen to avoid violating the restraining order. Victoria, it read, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not the money, although God knows I could use it, but you, your strength, your brilliance, your grace. I was so focused on feeling important that I couldn't see I was married to the most important person in any room. I'm working on myself now. Therapy, recovery, trying to become someone better. Not for you, I know that ship has sailed, but for me. So I can live with what I did. I hope Catherine is well. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. I read it twice, then fed it into the fireplace like I had the papers he'd wanted me to sign so long ago. Some apologies come too late, some damage can't be undone. But I did hope he meant it about becoming better. Not for my sake, but for his own. Because carrying that kind of bitterness and regret seemed like a fitting punishment for a man who'd thrown away everything real in pursuit of something fake. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story gave you the justice you needed to see, check out the other videos on screen. They're just as satisfying. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? See you in the next story. A year after Catherine's birth, Chen Technologies announced our biggest innovation yet, a revolutionary battery technology that would make electric vehicles truly sustainable. The press conference was global, broadcast in 17 countries, covered by every major outlet. I stood at the podium, 1 year older and infinitely wiser, and told the world about my grandmother's final secret project, the one she'd been working on when she died, the one I'd spent the year perfecting. In the audience, I saw faces I recognized. Evelyn, of course, holding Catherine, who was now walking and babbling. Mr. Chen, beaming with pride. My mother, who I'd slowly begun to reconcile with on the condition that she respect my boundaries. And in the very back, trying to be invisible, but failing, Marcus. I didn't acknowledge him, didn't let my gaze linger. He was part of my past, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. I focused instead on the future, on the technology that would change transportation forever, on the company that would employ thousands, on the legacy I was building for my daughter. After the presentation, as I was leaving the stage, a young reporter stopped me. Ms. Chen Grant, one last question. If you could go back to that day, when you were in labor and your husband abandoned you, knowing everything you know now, would you change anything? I thought about it seriously, about the pain of that day, the betrayal, the fear, about everything that had come after. No, I said finally, because that day taught me the most important lesson of my life. I didn't need someone to save me. I didn't need someone to complete me. I was already whole. I was already powerful. I just needed the courage to claim it. And once I did, everything else fell into place. I walked off the stage to thunderous applause, Catherine reaching for me from Evelyn's arms, my daughter's laughter, the sweetest sound in the world. Behind me, I left Marcus standing in the shadows, watching the life he could have had if only he'd been smart enough to recognize what he already possessed. But that was his burden to carry now, not mine. I had an empire to run, a daughter to raise, and a world to change. And I'd do it all without him, just like my grandmother had taught me. The quiet ones, after all, are always the most dangerous. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't quite finished with Marcus yet. 3 months after the battery technology launch, I received an unexpected visitor at Chen Technologies. My assistant buzzed my office, her voice uncertain. Ms. Chen Grant, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Amanda Stockton and that it's urgent. Amber. My entire body went rigid. Is security with her? Yes, ma'am. She's in conference room B with 2 officers present. She says she'll only speak to you and that you'll want to hear what she has to say. I should have refused, should have had security escort her out immediately. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in what the woman who'd destroyed Marcus had to say. I'll be down in 5 minutes. Keep security there. When I entered the conference room, Amber looked nothing like the glamorous woman from the photos Marcus had shown me. Her blonde hair was darker at the roots, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore an orange prison jumpsuit, her wrists cuffed in front of her. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and tired. But her eyes were still sharp, calculating, assessing me with the same predatory intelligence that had fooled so many men. "Ms. Chen Grant," she said, attempting a smile. "Thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes," I replied, remaining standing, and only because I'm curious why a federal inmate would request a meeting with me. "Because we have something in common," Amber said. "Marcus." "I have nothing in common with you. You're a con artist. I'm a CEO. "True, but we both saw through him, didn't we? We both recognized him for the weak, arrogant fool he is." She leaned forward as much as her restraints allowed. "I need to tell you something. Something you deserve to know." I glanced at the security officers, who nodded that they were paying attention. "Go ahead." "Marcus didn't just want your house," Amber said. "He wanted everything, the whole inheritance. He came to me 6 months before your baby was born, told me he'd married rich, but that his wife was holding out on him. Said her grandmother had left her some money, but she wouldn't tell him how much. He wanted my help figuring out the exact amount and getting access to it." My blood went cold. 6 months before? Maybe longer. I don't remember exactly when we met. But the point is, the affair wasn't just about sex or romance. It was a job. He hired me, essentially. Promised me 10% of whatever we could extract from you. She laughed bitterly. "Of course, he didn't tell me you were worth nearly $1 billion. If he had, I might have asked for a better percentage." I sat down slowly, processing this. "He planned this from the beginning." "Not from the very beginning. According to him, he really did marry you for love, or whatever passes for love in his narcissistic little heart. But once he found out about the Chen name, once he started researching your grandmother, he got greedy, started looking for ways to maximize his return on investment." Amber's expression hardened. "He's the one who suggested, the papers during labor, by the way, said you'd be too distracted and in pain to read them carefully. Said pregnant women were easy marks because their hormones made them stupid." The rage that filled me was white-hot and absolute. I'd thought I understood the depth of Marcus's betrayal, but this was something else entirely. This was premeditation. This was calculation. This was cold, deliberate cruelty. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "Because I'm going to prison for a long time, Ms. Chen Grant, 7 to 10 years if I'm lucky. And Marcus? He's out there, free, probably already planning his next move with his next target. That's not justice." She met my eyes. "I may be a con artist, but I own what I am. Marcus pretends to be respectable, honorable. He's worse than me because at least I'm honest about being a monster." "You want me to go after him. I want you to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. I've been keeping records. Every conversation we had, every plan we made, every admission he made about his intentions with you. My lawyer has copies. If you want them, they're yours. Consider it my apology for the role I played in hurting you." I studied her face, looking for the con, the angle, but all I saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. "Why would you have kept records?" "Insurance. In my line of work, you always keep insurance. I just never thought I'd be using it to help the mark instead of protect myself." She shrugged. "But like I said, we have something in common. He underestimated both of us. The difference is, you have the power to make him pay for it. I'm asking you to use it." I stood up. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours. If these records are legitimate, if they prove what you're saying, then yes, I'll use them. But Amber, this doesn't absolve you of what you did. You're still going to prison, and you deserve to be there." "I know," she said quietly, "but maybe if I help you, it'll balance the scales a little bit. Maybe I can live with myself if I know I helped stop him from doing this again." I left the conference room and went straight to Mr. Chen's office. Within hours, we had Amber's lawyer on the phone, and by the end of the day, we had copies of everything: text messages, recorded phone calls, emails, a complete roadmap of Marcus's scheme to defraud me, documented in excruciating detail by the woman he'd partnered with. Mr. Chen reviewed the materials with a grim expression. "This is damning, Ms. Victoria. With this evidence, we could pursue criminal charges. Attempted fraud, conspiracy, possibly more. Do it, I said. File everything. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Ms. Victoria, are you certain? This will be very public, very ugly. The media will have a field day. I thought about Catherine, asleep in her nursery at home, about the world I was building for her, a world where women didn't have to shrink themselves or hide their worth, a world where predators like Marcus faced consequences. I'm certain. He tried to destroy me while I was at my most vulnerable. He planned it, calculated it, executed it with no remorse. If I let that go unpunished, I'm telling every other Marcus out there that they can do the same thing. I won't do that. Not for my daughter, not for any woman. The investigation took 3 months. Federal prosecutors, working with Mr. Chen's firm, built an airtight case. Marcus was charged with attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse, the latter because his scheme had targeted inheritance from my deceased grandmother. The day they arrested him was surreal. I was in my office when Evelyn burst in, her phone in hand, pulling up a live news feed. Vic, you need to see this. On the screen, Marcus was being led out of his apartment building in handcuffs. He was wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, a far cry from the polished executive he'd once been. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and Marcus's face was a mask of shock and rage. Marcus Reynolds, former manager at Sterling Construction, and ex-husband of billionaire CEO Victoria Chen Grant, was arrested this morning on federal fraud charges, the news anchor announced. Prosecutors allege that Reynolds conspired with convicted con artist Amanda Stockton to defraud Chen Grant of her inheritance while she was pregnant with their child. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in federal prison. I watched without emotion as they loaded him into the police car. Evelyn sat beside me, Catherine on her lap, babbling happily and oblivious to the fact that her biological father was being destroyed on national television. How do you feel? Evelyn asked quietly. Nothing, I said honestly. I feel absolutely nothing for him. The trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, Marcus's family finally reached out, not to apologize, but to beg. Patricia called first, her aristocratic composure cracking. Victoria, please. Marcus is my son. Whatever he did, whatever mistakes he made, he doesn't deserve prison. 20 years, Victoria. He'll be an old man when he gets out. He should have thought of that before he tried to rob me while I was in labor, I replied coldly. But think of the family, think of Stephanie, of me, will be humiliated, destroyed. The way he tried to destroy me, the way he succeeded in humiliating me when he abandoned me at my most vulnerable. Patricia, you called me the day after Catherine was born and pretended you didn't know Marcus wasn't there. You protected him. You enabled him. Now you can live with the consequences. I'm begging you. Then beg him to take a plea deal because I'm not dropping the charges. Stephanie tried next, showing up at my office unannounced. Security stopped her in the lobby, but she caused enough of a scene that I agreed to see her. You're going to ruin his life, she said, tears streaming down her face. My brother made mistakes, yes, but this is too much. Prison? Victoria? Really? Your brother didn't make mistakes, Stephanie. He made choices. Calculated, deliberate choices to manipulate and defraud me. To use my pregnancy, my vulnerability, my trust against me. That's not a mistake. That's who he is. But you're rich. You don't need revenge. You already won. This isn't about winning or revenge. It's about justice. It's about making sure he can't do this to the next woman, the next trusting person who makes the mistake of loving him. I stood up. And Stephanie, you knew. Maybe not the extent of it, but you knew something was wrong. You knew he'd abandoned me in labor. You knew about Amber, and you said nothing. You asked me to just work it out so you wouldn't have drama at Sunday brunch. Don't come here now acting like you care about justice or fairness. She left sobbing, but I felt no guilt. I'd learned something important over the past year. Protecting yourself, standing up for yourself, sometimes meant being willing to be seen as the villain by people who wanted you to stay a victim. The trial began on a cold January morning, exactly 18 months after Catherine's birth. I testified on the first day, walking the jury through everything: the pregnancy, Marcus's increasing distance, the affair, the papers he'd demanded I sign while in labor, his abandonment. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Janet Torres, handled me gently. Ms. Chen Grant, did you have any indication before your labor that your husband was planning to defraud you? No, I thought he loved me. I thought we were building a life together. And when he presented you with these papers demanding you sign over your house while you were having contractions, what did you think? I thought he'd lost his mind. I couldn't understand why he would choose that moment, why he would prioritize paperwork over our child being born. It wasn't until later that I understood it was calculated. He wanted me confused, in pain, desperate. He thought it would make me compliant. But you refused to sign. I refused to sign. The defense attorney, a slick man named Richard Vance, tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-wife during cross-examination. Ms. Chen Grant, isn't it true that you were angry when your husband wanted to end the marriage? I was devastated. There's a difference. Devastated enough to want revenge? Determined enough to want justice. Again, there's a difference. You're a very wealthy woman now. You run a major corporation. You have full custody of your daughter. You've moved on with your life quite successfully. Why put my client through this ordeal? I looked directly at Marcus, who sat at the defense table looking small and defeated. Because what he did was criminal. Because if I don't hold him accountable, I'm enabling him to do this to someone else. Because my daughter deserves to grow up in a world where men can't prey on pregnant women and walk away unpunished. The courtroom was silent when I finished. Amber testified next, via video link from prison. She walked the jury through Marcus's plan in clinical detail, showing texts where he'd discussed timing the house transfer for maximum vulnerability, emails where he'd researched the legal implications of fraud against a pregnant woman, recordings where he'd laughed about how easy I would be to manipulate. By the time she finished, several jury members looked physically ill. Marcus's defense was weak. He claimed he'd been in love with Amber, that she'd manipulated him, that he'd never intended actual fraud, just a legitimate property transfer between spouses. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks later. I didn't attend. I'd said everything I needed to say during the trial, but Evelyn went and recorded it for me. That night, after Catherine was asleep, I watched the video. Marcus's statement to the judge was pathetic, full of excuses and self-pity. I made mistakes, Your Honor. I let greed cloud my judgment. But I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to provide for my future, to feel successful for once in my life. The judge, an older woman named Barbara Henderson, was unmoved. Mr. Reynolds, you didn't just make mistakes. You engaged in a calculated scheme to defraud your pregnant wife of her inheritance. You abandoned her during medical emergency to pursue your fraudulent goals. You showed no remorse until you were caught, and even now your statement focuses more on your wounded pride than on the harm you caused. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 10 years served. 15 years. Marcus's face crumpled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder. His mother, sitting in the gallery, began to cry, and I felt nothing but a sense of profound relief that it was finally over. The media coverage was intense for a few weeks, then gradually faded as newer scandals took precedence. Life returned to something resembling normal, though my normal now included running a Fortune 500 company and raising a toddler who was growing more brilliant and stubborn every day. On Catherine's second birthday, I threw a party at the house. Not a lavish affair, just close friends, Evelyn's family, some of my executives and their children. We decorated the garden with streamers and balloons. Catherine wore a little dress with dragons embroidered on it, a gift from Mr. Chen's wife. As I watched my daughter tear into her birthday cake with gleeful abandon, chocolate frosting covering her face, I felt Evelyn sit down beside me. You did good, Vic, she said quietly. Look at her. She's happy. She's loved. She'll never know anything but strength and security because of what you did. We did, I corrected. I couldn't have survived this without you. True. I am pretty amazing. She grinned, then grew more serious. Have you thought about what you'll tell her? When she's old enough to ask about her father? I had thought about it. Often. I'll tell her the truth. That her father made choices that hurt people, that he had to face the consequences of those choices. But I'll also tell her that she's not defined by his mistakes. That she comes from a long line of strong women who built empires and changed the world. That's her legacy, not his. She's lucky to have you as a mother. I'm lucky to have her as a daughter. Later that night, after the guests had left and Catherine was asleep, I sat in Grandma's library with a glass of wine, thinking about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the fight, the victory. It had been the hardest 2 years of my life, but also the most transformative. My phone buzzed with an email from Mr. Chen. The subject line read, Final Closure. Inside was a legal document. Marcus had officially signed away all parental rights to Catherine from prison, finalizing what he'd agreed to in our divorce settlement. There was a note attached. He knows he has no chance of ever being part of her life, and his lawyer advised him that maintaining his legal status as her father would only expose him to potential civil suits. Consider this the final severing of all ties. I read it twice, then filed it away in the folder marked Marcus, closed. It was over. Truly, completely over. 3 years later, I stood on a stage at the Women in Technology conference, giving the keynote speech. Catherine was 5 now, in kindergarten, brilliant and fierce, and everything I'd hoped she'd be. Chen Technologies had tripled in value under my leadership, and I was finally, genuinely happy. The question I get asked most often, I told the audience of thousands, is how I balance it all. How I run a company, raise a child, maintain my sanity. And the truth is, I don't balance it. I integrate it. My daughter comes to the office sometimes. She sees me work, sees me lead, sees me make decisions. She's learning that women don't have to choose between career and family. We can have both on our own terms. Applause rippled through the crowd. But the other truth is that I learned who I was in the darkest moment of my life. When I was abandoned, betrayed, told I was worthless, that's when I discovered my actual worth. Not my financial worth, the inheritance I'd received, but my inherent worth as a human being. And that's the lesson I want to share with all of you today. Your worth is not determined by who loves you or who leaves you. It's not determined by your title or your bank account. It's determined by who you choose to be when everything falls apart. After the speech, a young woman approached me, maybe 25, with tears in her eyes. "Ms. Chen Grant, I just wanted to thank you. My boyfriend, he was trying to get me to sign over my apartment, the one my grandmother left me. He said it was just paperwork, that it didn't mean anything, but after hearing your story in the news, I said no, and he left me, and I thought I'd made a mistake, but now..." She wiped her eyes. "Now I know I saved myself." I took her hands in mine. "You saved yourself. Remember that. Remember that you are strong enough to protect what matters." Driving home that night, I thought about all of the women who'd reached out over the years. The emails, the letters, the messages on social media. Women who'd left bad marriages, stood up to abusive partners, refused to sign away their power. My story had resonated not because it was unique, but because it was universal. So many women had been in that same position, pressured and manipulated, and told they were worthless. The difference was, I'd had the resources to fight back. And I'd used those resources not just for myself, but to light the way for others. When I got home, Catherine ran to greet me, her school art project clutched in her hands. "Mommy, look what I made!" It was a drawing of our family, her, me, and Evelyn, standing in front of Chen Technologies, all wearing capes like superheroes. "That's us," she said proudly. "We're the strongest people in the world." I knelt down and hugged her tight. "You know what, baby? You're absolutely right. We are." That night, after tucking Catherine into bed, I stood in front of Grandma's portrait one last time. "I hope you're proud," I whispered to her image. "I hope I've honored everything you built." And in the quiet of that library, with moonlight streaming through the windows, I could almost hear her reply, "You honored it by becoming yourself. That's all I ever wanted." I smiled, turned off the light, and went upstairs to my daughter, my life, my hard-won happiness. Marcus was where he belonged, his name a footnote in my story rather than its defining chapter. And I was exactly where I was meant to be, free, powerful, and finally, completely at peace. The quiet ones are always the most dangerous, but the healed ones, the ones who've been through fire and came out stronger, were absolutely unstoppable.